And what we're going to talk about today is how to use simulacra and simulation to grow your business. This content is going to be for the business owner that wants to understand how you can use what we call simulacra and simulations to appeal to the desires of your customers to grow your business. And I'm going to give you some really, really good examples to break this down that you will be able to implement very, very fast. I got this information from a book called Simulacra and Simulation by a French philosopher named Jean-Paul Drillard. And if you watch the movie The Matrix, when Neo is in his apartment, it's towards the beginning of the movie, he also pulls this same book out because the movie The Matrix is is loosely based on some of the themes that you see inside this book. The definition. So the definition of simulacrum is an image or a representation of something or someone. We have an example sentence that a small scale simulacrum of a skyscraper. Simulation definition, imitation of a situation or process or the action of pretending or also a deception. Now let's go into the examples. What we have here is we have imitation shrimp, we have veggie seafood, and it's made to look like shrimp. And so you may ask yourself, well, why is this being done? I want you to understand from a marketing standpoint is that most people become vegetarians not when they're born, they're not raised vegetarians, they're not raised vegans. They transition into this particular lifestyle over the course of their life. However, they've been conditioned to eat meat the majority of their life. They've been conditioned to eat meat, so they have this perception of how they think food should look, how it should feel, and also the texture of food. And what vegetarian food manufacturers have found out, that if they package food and they essentially make it look like it's meat-based, the desire of the person to want their food to look a certain way is met, and it also meets the desire to fulfill a vegetarian or vegan lifestyle. We also have what we call tofurkey, which is designed to look like cold cuts. We have chickenless pulled chicken, which is a plant-based item that is designed to look like pulled chicken. And then we have the Boca burgers, where if you look at the picture, it looks like a flame broiled burger. However, it's a soy burger. And so what we understand is that we have this audience that desires to eat vegetarian, they desire to eat vegan. However, they want their food items to resemble the food items that they've been eating their whole life. So we give them essentially a simulacra of real meat. And we package it, make it look like real meat. We make the photographs look like real meat. However, it's all going to be plant-based. We also have the chicken-free strips. And so if you look at the box or you look at the packaging, it says plant-based protein that looks, feels, tastes, and acts like chicken without the cluck. We also have the crispy tenders that are designed to look like chicken tenders, but it's also plant-based. So you have to really, really understand what is going on inside the head of this particular customer, where they want to feel like they're eating more healthy. They want to follow a vegan or vegetarian diet. However, they also desire for their food to resemble meat. And you really have to be able to understand the desires of that customer and how you can appeal to both the desires at the same time by giving them a simulacrum of real meat. Now let's go to it from a television programming standpoint. There's a show that comes on called Iyanla Fix My Life. And this show is essentially a simulacrum or a simulation of mental health therapy or psychological counseling. And so people come on the show, they go through this mock or simulated psychological counseling, and people watch it and really, really believe that they're watching a psychological counseling session. They really believe that they're watching some type of mental health therapy. So here's some examples. The rapper Turk was on the show. Iyanla comes out with all the props. She does all the theatrics because we have to understand that this is on television, so it has to be entertaining. And they go through this routine to make it seem like he's going through some type of psychological counseling. Here's another example with more props because we understand that this is entertainment based, in which she's counseling this man, or not really, I wouldn't say counseling because that's a medical term. So in which she is interacting with a member of this particular entertainment vehicle, and it's supposed to resemble a counseling session. So what you have is you have people will say, well, you know what? I watched this show and I'm fairly confident that what I'm watching is a real psychological counseling or a real accurate, valid mental health treatment. I'm somebody that worked in corporate medicine for around 7 years in the state of Florida. And because of that, I know better because there is a law called HIPAA. It's just an abbreviation. And it really deals with making sure that patient information is private, that it doesn't get released. And so working in corporate healthcare, what you understand is that anybody that is not involved in the circle of care for that patient, they're not supposed to know anything about what that patient is going through. So what you can't do is talk about a patient in an elevator. What you can't do is talk about a patient in a restaurant or a cafeteria, because other people may hear information on that patient. And if they're not intimately involved in that patient's circle of care, then they don't have a need to know anything about that patient. And this law or this mandate or this ordinance was created by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, so it's federally mandated that we must follow this. Therefore, you're not going to have a situation in which a licensed counselor or a licensed mental health therapist or a licensed psychologist by the state is going to be broadcasting their treatment on television, because it's a violation of the HIPAA Act. However, we create this simulation of this particular type of treatment and we make it entertainment based, and then people believe that they're seeing this. And the reason why this works is because the majority of the United States population will never undergo any type of mental health treatment. They just won't do it, especially black people. And this show is really targeted towards black people. Most black people will never go to any real mental health treatment, maybe unless they're incarcerated. They just won't do it. And even then, it's very unlikely that they'll have access to those kind of resources. So because most black people don't even know what real psychological counseling looks like, it's easy to give them a simulation of what they believe it to be. So essentially, we have a simulation of something that is not even accurate. Now let's go to something called, there's a theme park in Tampa, Florida called Busch Gardens. And part of that theme park is almost like a wildlife reserve in which Busch Gardens has animals. And you can go out on the reserve and you kind of look at the animals, almost like a safari. And what this reserve does is it's a simulation or a simulacra of animals and how animals exist in the wild. However, the difference is this: large animals like rhinoceros, Busch Gardens has lions, they have giraffes, they also have elephants. Those animals may have a range of literally tens of hundreds of miles. I would say hundreds of miles, because what they're going to do is they're going to follow their resources. So they're going to follow their food and they're going to follow their water. However, when you put the animal on the reserve, food and water is being brought to the animals, being supplied. So the animal no longer has that need to have to travel to make sure they're always in contact with their resources that they need to survive. So what Busch Gardens does is it creates a simulation of nature, puts animals on it, and then you're allowed to go out and observe those animals in what you believe to be their natural state, but it's not their natural state, because in the animal's natural state, they have to consistently always follow their resources. So it's not really the natural state. They also don't have to deal with natural predators because they're also not in their natural state. So there's no situation in which the lions will attack another one of the animals because everything's kept separated. However, you're able to go out and observe this simulation of these animals in nature. And people desire to see this because, it's very unlikely that the majority of us are going to get a chance to see these animals in Africa. And for a lot of these animals, their natural habitat is being destroyed or they're being poached off of their natural habitat. So what people have decided to do is to pull them off of that, put them on reserves, and allow you to observe them on a reserve. And then you start to believe that this is really their natural state. But it's really not the natural state of zebras and giraffes to be in the same environment that close to each other. They just do it because they've created this simulated environment. What you want to ask yourself as a business owner is, what are the desires of my customers or my prospects? And how can I create a simulation based on their desires that I can essentially have them involve themselves in, that fits their desires, that can give them value at such a high level well, they'll exchange that value for money. So continue to ask yourself this question over and over again, and eventually the answer will come to you, and then you can feel the desires of your customer by doing this. This is David W.